All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our BCBA practice exam series where we're going through another set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please subscribe for all of our updates. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials. The link is in the comments below. When you pass your exam, please let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. Devon is using an established token economy that has been in place for over a month. There are several backup items, including luxury items, available. Devon noticed this week that his clients are less likely to work for tokens than they were before and are starting to hoard tokens instead of spending them. What should Devon try next based on this information? When we design token economies, we don't want the economy to be stagnant. The economy needs to evolve with the client. And when we talk about the economy, we're talking about the value of the tokens, we're talking about the backup reinforcers, the value of those backups, and how can we maintain a level of motivation and reinforcing properties with these tokens. So, what do we know so far? Because we're trying to establish what Devon should try next. Well, we know Devon has this established token economy, been in place for over a month, so a decent amount of time. Many backup items, many luxury items, but he notices his clients are less likely to work. And then when they get the tokens, they are hoarding the tokens and not spending them. It's not a good thing if your clients aren't exchanging the tokens. That's the entire point is we give the tokens or the client earns the tokens and then they exchange them. The exchange is where that reinforcement comes into play. So if Devon sees his clients aren't working and they're not trading their tokens, what can Devon start to think about? Well, he has to think about how can I get them spending the tokens again? Because if they're not going to spend the tokens, then why would they work for those tokens? So that's the issue. So let's look at A. Keep the tokens earned to item cost ratio small. When you first start out with a token economy, you want the cost of the items to be very small, very low. And so your learner is earning tokens quickly and also spending them quickly. Now, we don't know exactly what items cost here, but the ratio doesn't seem to be the issue because they have plenty of tokens to the point where they're now hoarding the tokens. They're not even spending them. B, increase the cost of backup items, which would devalue the tokens. Well, we don't want to devalue the tokens, right? We don't want to increase the cost of items because they aren't spending them in the first place. If it were the case where they had too many tokens, they were spending them, they just couldn't spend them fast enough, that will be a different story. But that's not the case here. They're not even spending the tokens. C, increase the price of only necessary backup items. Again, the price increase does not seem to be the solution. If we increase the price, it's not going to get them to suddenly start spending the tokens. So D, increase the number of luxury items available. Devon should try to get more items. If the current items aren't effective at getting the client to spend the tokens, well, we need to think about what else can we include that is going to motivate the client to actually spend the tokens. So Devon should increase the number of luxury items available. Your favorite hockey team is the Las Vegas Golden Knights, who are in the playoffs this year. While watching the games, you have started to grind your teeth and bite your nails. To combat these behaviors, you start identifying when you are about to engage in or are engaged in these behaviors and start chewing gum instead. What are you demonstrating? Behavior change question, and most behavior change procedures are socially mediated, meaning there's at least two people involved. But when there's only one person involved, we're looking in terms of self-management. And so what are you demonstrating here as part of self-management? Because we know your favorite team is in the playoffs, you're watching the games and are grinding your teeth and biting your nails. You want to stop this, right? And so in order to stop it or combat it, you're now identifying. And then when you identify you're engaged in the behaviors, you do something different. And so what kind of strategy is it when we identify a behavior chain is about to happen or is happening, and we do something instead of the current behavior chain to change that behavior? What do we call that? A, mass practice. Mass practice is a type of overcorrection for self-management where we engage in the same behavior over and over again in order to change the behavior. It's not what we're doing here, right? You're not intentionally trying to grind your teeth or bite your nails over and over again. So mass practice is not in place. What about self-evaluation? Well, self-evaluation, you're comparing yourself against another pre-established criteria. You're not comparing yourself to other teeth grinders or nail biters here. We're simply looking at your behavior and your behavior alone. C, habit reversal. Habit reversal is exactly what we're doing here, or more or less exactly what we're doing, where you're identifying a place in a behavior chain. And when you feel that behavior chain is about to start or has already started, you do something else. That is a piece of habit reversal. And then restitutional overcorrection, another type of overcorrection procedure where you are supposed to restore the environment to a better state than it was before. Clearly, we're not restoring the environment here. So, what we're doing is something called habit reversal. When you identify a behavior chain is about to start or has started, and then you do something else to interrupt the chain. A 7-year-old client will spin in circles repeatedly when excited. This often happens when handed a tangible. What is the most appropriate first step in addressing the behavior? Let's not overthink this, right? So we're looking at first step in addressing the behavior. Well, what do we know so far? We know we have a 7-year-old client. They're spinning in circles when handed a tangible. Now, just based on that information, you can assume a lot of things, right? We could assume the function is a tangible. We can assume that repeatedly might mean it's not socially valid. But all we can do is assume. And we really don't want to assume a whole lot, especially on the exam, because this information doesn't really tell the full story. And why not? Well, this is no different than asking a parent about the behavior. Have you actually seen the behavior? No. Have you measured it? No. All you know is allegedly the client spins in circles repeatedly when excited and often when handed a tangible. Is that enough to really start an intervention? Not necessarily. So, what is the most appropriate first step? That being said, A, block the spinning response when a tangible is given to the client. Now, the word repeatedly might evoke some feelings of social validity. We don't know that for sure. We don't know if this is a problem. Plenty of kids get excited when handed a tangible. So we don't have enough information to say, well, let's start blocking this. B, a functional behavior assessment should be conducted for the spinning behavior. Yes. Before we do anything else, we need a full FBA on this behavior. Whenever a behavior pops up, even if you have indirect information, you've got to conduct an FBA before proceeding with any sort of intervention. C, reinforce the client in the absence of spinning in circles. Again, do we need a DRO? Do we need to change the behavior? Is this going to work? We don't know yet, right? We need that FBA. And then D, teach the client a way to communicate that they're excited when receiving a tangible. Well, this might be their way of communicating that they're excited. Is it a problem? We don't know yet. To figure out if it's a problem and if we need some of these interventions, first things first is to do a functional behavior assessment. Never skip the direct assessment and try to jump right into an intervention. We have to have that first assessment or that functional behavior assessment before we start delivering service. You are using equivalence-based instruction to teach your client relationships between different stimuli. You present your first sample stimuli, A1, and teach that it corresponds to B1. You then present B2 and teach that it corresponds with A1. You then present C1 and teach that it corresponds with B3. How would you test for transitivity given this information? Stimulus equivalence, equivalence-based instruction, complicated and scary on the surface, not too challenging when you start to understand it. When we talk about equivalence-based instruction and stimulus equivalence, we're talking about the three main ideas: reflexivity, symmetry, transitivity, right? A equals A equals B, therefore B equals A, and then A equals B equals C, therefore A equals C. If you know those main ideas, then you can answer all equivalence-based instruction. So let's break it down here, right? And if you're versed in this or you're fluent in this, you might not have to do this, but let's just write this out real quick, right? So you have A1 equals B1, then B or A1 equals B2, and then B3 equals C1. Now, how could we possibly test for transitivity? Well, transitivity is going to be A equals B, B equals C, therefore A equals C. And so if you have this idea that A1 equals B1 and A1 equals B2, how can we test for transitivity? Test the relationship between A1 and B3 was derived. Well, we never taught any sort of association between A1 and B3. So transitivity is likely not available yet, just based on the stimuli we have. Now, we could have something like symmetry, right, between A1 and B3, but we're testing for transitivity. What about C1 and B2? Well, same thing here. There is no relationship between C1 and B2 yet. B1 and B2? Well, let's see. Let's call this A equals B, and then A equals C. So if we tested if B equals C, right, that would be transitivity. Okay. And that's the whole idea. And then A1 equals A1 would be reflexivity, which we're not testing for. We're testing for transitivity. Now, if you're just starting out, that might seem very confusing. My recommendation is to look at stimulus equivalence in the right mindset and maybe towards the end of your studies when you're not going to become overwhelmed or confused by it. When you get down to it and you focus on reflexivity, symmetry, and transitivity, and you realize that we're looking at derived relations or relations that are untaught, it becomes very simple. If you have to draw it out when you're learning it, draw it out. That's why you get pencil and paper. That's why you have a lot of time on the exam. You feel free to draw it out. In this case, if you're going to test for transitivity, you're going to test to see if a relationship between B1 and B2 was derived. When we say derived, we just mean untaught. An artist gets a new job designing logos for big companies. The first day on the job, the artist boss asks them to create a logo from scratch just for probing purposes. What is the reason probing is used in this scenario? Very easy question. And as I always say, when you get an easy question, don't overthink it. Don't try to make it harder than it is. Trust your preparation, answer it, move on. Also, a good question to remind us that we need to know even the basics. Probing, one of the most basic ideas we have, still got to know it. When we probe, what are we doing? We're asking someone to engage in a response to see what their skill level is. That's essentially what probing is. So if we have an artist who's designing logos, and the first day the boss says create a logo from scratch, what is the boss trying to accomplish? Well, they're probing what can that artist do? What is the artist's skill level? So what is the reason probing is used? A, probing will help identify the artist's current skill level. Exactly what we predicted. You'll find you're going to start predicting answers. The more you do this, the better you get at it. And especially on easy questions, A is very clearly what we're looking for. But let's still read the other answer choices. B, probing will help identify the function of the behavior. Probing is not going to identify our function. C, probing will help identify potential reinforcement for the artist. We're not looking at preferences here. And then D, probing will provide reinforcement for the artist. Not the purpose of the probe in this scenario. What the boss is trying to do is identify the artist's current skill level by asking them to create a logo from scratch. All right, thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe for all of our updates. We post videos for BCBA and BCABA exams on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Check out behavioranalyst.com for all of our study materials. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.